beloved viewers, subscribers. For those who may be watching this on the Shabbat, we say Shalom Shabbat and Shabbat Shalom to you. And we are very thankful you are able to join us for this lesson. We are taking a look at Barashyth or Genesis 47, and we're going to look at this chapter as a cautionary and very instructive chapter that looks at financial exhaustion of a people and enslavement to a government system or servitude. Barashyth 47 or Genesis 47, for those who may not be so familiar with that word, presents a compelling story that takes place in the context of a severe famine that struck Mytsrym or Egypt and Canaan. Joseph or Joseph, having been appointed governor by Pharoah or Pharaoh as some would know, plays a central role in managing Mytsrym's or Egypt's food supplies. This chapter shows how those of Mytsrym, having exhausted all their financial resources and assets, ultimately sold their land, even themselves, into servitude to Pharoah to survive. And this scriptural narrative serves as a powerful lesson on the dangers of financial mismanagement, the dangers of depending on the system or dependency on the system, and the increasing power of government control or the system's control. By examining the implications of this passage in a modern context, or how it applies to us in these times, we can draw valuable insights into the importance of being financially prudent, the risks of economic dependency, and the consequences of an overreaching system of governance. All right, so let's get into this chapter. So we invite you to turn with us in the various versions you may have out there that you have access to as we read Barashyth 47. As you continue, however, to read through Torah, you recognize that as power changes hands, this particular system of the overreaching control of a governing system is then transferred to how the people of the Most High were treated and then enslaved by the very system that was under the hand of Yosef. And this would have taken place much later, as scripture told us. The Pharaoh that came up eventually didn't know of Yosef, didn't know of anything else, etc. But let's get into the scripture.
Barashyth 47, verse 13 to 26. Now there was no bread in all the land, because the scarcity of food was very severe. And the land of Mytsrym and all the land of Canaan became exhausted from the scarcity of food. And Joseph gathered up all silver that was found in the land of Mytsrym and the land of Canaan, for the grain which they brought. And Joseph brought the silver into Pharaoh's house. And when the silver was all spent in the land of Mytsrym and the land of Canaan, all the Mytsrites came to Joseph and said, Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the silver is gone. And Joseph said, Give your livestock, and I will give you bread for your livestock, if the silver is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, for the flocks they owned, for the herds they owned, for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. And when that year ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, We do not hide from my master that our silver is all spent, and my master also has the livestock we own. There has not any been left before my master, but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, but we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and let us and our land be servants of Pharaoh. And give us seed, and let us live and not die, and let the land not lie waste. And Joseph bought the entire land of Mytsrym for Pharaoh, because every man of Mytsrym sold his field, because the scarcity of food was severe upon them. And the land came to be Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he moved them into the cities from one end of the borders of the Mytsrym to the other end. Only the ground of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had portions allotted to them by Pharaoh, and they ate their portion which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their ground. And Joseph said to the people, Look, I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh. Look, there is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall be that in the harvest you shall give 1/5 of Pharaoh, and 4/5 is your own, as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your household, and as food for your little ones. And they said, You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in your eyes of my master, and we shall become Pharaoh's servants. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Mytsrym to this yom, that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the ground of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's.
The narrative of Barashyth 47 outlines a series of transactions that reveal the progressive impoverishment of the people of Mytsrym and their increasing dependency on the system of government of that time for survival. Let us take a look at some key events in details. We begin at verses 13 to 15, because prior to that we have Yosef introducing his family to Pharoah and them being established in the land of Goshen. So the context of what we're focusing on begins at verse 13. And we see where the theme, or the common theme of verses 13 to 15, is really the exhaustion of the finances of the people of Mytsrym, and the initial stages of dependency. So the famine is severe, and both Mytsrym, or Egypt, and Canaan are affected. People come to Yosef to buy grain, spending all their money until it is exhausted. When the money runs out, they appeal to Yosef, stating Why should we die before your eyes? For our money is gone and we have no more money. Now, this represents the initial stage of financial depletion. The people first rely on their liquid assets, being money, to purchase essential goods. When money is exhausted, financial independence is lost. And so the people become reliant on the state for survival, much like a lot of what is happening now. So many persons have run themselves into credit card debts, have run themselves into real financial quagmires, and they are now heavily dependent on the state in whichever country or land they live or they dwell. And so for them to survive, they have to depend on handouts from the state. In verses 16 to 17, we see where it progresses from the exhaustion of their finances to trading livestock for food. Yosef responds to their plea by instructing the people to bring their livestock in exchange for food. And as a result, they trade their horses, their flocks, their herds, their donkeys for grain to sustain themselves another year. At this stage, the people begin selling off valuable but non-liquid assets, being livestock, to meet immediate needs. And this represents a deeper level of economic vulnerability, as these assets could have provided ongoing sustenance and economic stability for the people, but because of their immediate gratification, they were hungry. They were getting desperate. They did not see the value or the long-term value of their assets. And so much like a number of persons now who do not see how, for example, in strenuous times, their homes may be converted into rental spaces that could potentially bring in money, but rather they sell it away. They sell their homes, cars that could possibly be entered into delivery services or maybe rental services or so, but they sell the cars because of immediate needs. We get to verses 18 to 19 and we see where, okay, they're traded in livestock for food for another year. And now they are surrendering land and freedom. It's getting more intense. With no money or livestock left, the people return to Yosef and the following year, so each year it's getting worse, and offer their land and even themselves as servants or enslaved people in exchange for food. They say, buy our land for food, and we and our land will be servants to Pharaoh or Pharaoh. This represents the final stage of financial and personal desperation, where people are willing to relinquish their most fundamental assets, land, and freedom. Here, economic hardship leads to loss of personal autonomy and the ability to make independent decisions. We go to verses 20 to 21, and we see the theme running through these verses. It sort of looks like the consolidation of power by the system of government. And so Yosef acquires all the land in Mytsrym or Egypt for Pharaoh, the people are moved to cities and their land becomes Pharaoh's property. So in essence, becomes the property of the government because the people have sold out everything to the system. This centralizes power in the hands of the system. With the transfer of land ownership to the system, the people lose both economic independence and personal freedom. The governing system gains significant control over the population, which can lead to further exploitation of a people. I'm sure we can, various dispensations, wherever we now dwell, and based on the systems we are subject to, we can see how this is happening, and those who suffer the most are those who have sold out everything, who pretty much own nothing, who have no land, and that is the plan of a coming system. You will own nothing, and you will be, they say happy. In essence, they're saying you will find pleasure in having nothing. And of course, I deliberately made that statement because it was a statement that was made by a public figure that many of these governing systems take instructions from. We move to verses 23 to 24. And so now that there has been consolidation of power, naturally the system moves to the imposition of taxes. So taxes are levied against the population. So Yasaf implements a system where the people are given seed to plant on the land that now belongs to the system or the government of the time, or Pharaoh. They're required to give a fifth or 20% of their harvest to the system, keeping the remaining 4/5 for themselves. So this appears to represent an imposed tax on the people who are now working the very land they previously owned, and chose to sell out for food or immediate gratification. The imposition of this tax creates a system of perpetual indebtedness. That's what it redounds to, and servitude to the state. So people will always have to work to pay the state, and will always owe the state, because the state now owns the lands and the assets and the prime properties. We see that happening now. Yeah. As we move into verses 25 to 26, we see there's an acceptance of reduced freedom. The people express gratitude to Yasaf, acknowledging that he has pretty much saved their lives. However, they remain under the control of Pharaoh and are now living under a system that limits their freedom and keeps them indebted. The acceptance of this arrangement demonstrates how economic desperation can lead to a passive acceptance of reduced freedom and autonomy. Over time, people may become accustomed to servitude, for further entrenching the power of the state or the power of the system. If we look a little deeper into each of these themes I would have spoken of, the chapter is so profound, and there's so many lessons that we can garner. We look at the loss of financial independence. The The Egyptians first spent all their money to buy grain, spent everything they had to purchase food. It in the context now, this scenario represents living from paycheck to paycheck, or depleting one's savings without a plan for financial stability. Financial independence is the foundation of persons' freedom and autonomy, personal freedom, personal autonomy. When money runs out, individuals lose control over their choices and become vulnerable to external pressures and demands. What were some of the consequences of this choice? Loss of financial independence can lead to a cycle of debt where individuals are forced to borrow at high interest rates, sell off assets, or accept unfavorable labor conditions to meet their basic needs. This creates a form of economic enslavement where freedom is compromised and the quality of one's khay or life diminishes. A lot of individuals, even now, and families face this danger when they do not have what some would call emergency funds or a diversified source of income. Natural disasters happen, there are economic downturns or personal crises, and these can quickly lead to financial ruin and a dependence on the system for assistance, and even leaving you to the hands of predatory lenders and loan sharks. When we look at the theme of, the depletion of valuable assets with them selling out their livestock, when these Egyptians ran out of money, they traded their livestock for food. Livestock in ancient societies was a critical economic asset, providing food, labor, and trade value. Similarly, in modern times, valuable assets such as investments, property, vehicles provide ongoing economic stability. As I stated before, some people sell their homes and their cars and so on, rather than looking at ways to transform these into a business. It creates a socio-economic trap where individuals and families struggle to escape poverty. And this is passed down through the generations. And that's the system of Egypt. And remember, the Most High said when his people were disobedient, they would end up back in Egypt. Now notice, this was happening to the Egyptians at that time. However, we recognize that there's a transfer of this to even people of the Most High now. Though the people of the Most High weren't the ones who were experiencing it at that time, they are pretty much the ones experiencing it now because of disobedience. And so they have become what those of Mytsrym, the Mitzrites, experienced. They have become that society now in this current dispensation. The combination of high taxes, limited resources, dependence on the system's programs can stifle upward mobility and perpetuate inequality. Governing systems may also use tax policies to maintain control and ensure compliance among citizens. For instance, excessive taxation or fines can be used as a tool to suppress dissent or control certain populations. Such practices have the potential to create environments where the majority of the population becomes reliant on the state, reducing individual autonomy and the ability to challenge the authorities, especially if what the system is pushing goes against what the Most High intends or says. Because of that level of dependency on the system, it's difficult to be able to resist whatever is being thrusted upon the people. The next theme we looked at was this level of acceptance of reduced freedom as a necessary compromise. The Egyptians pretty much started to mellow down, and they accepted Yosef's arrangement, giving a portion of their harvest to Pharaoh in exchange for survival. And this reflects a common psychological and social phenomenon where people accept reduced freedom and autonomy when faced with desperation. It's happening now. The roles have somehow switched, and a lot of the people of the Most High, because of disobedience, no longer own anything, and so they fall in this trap, which was not originally on our people or ancestors. It was on the Egyptians. A lot of people now, much like those Mytsrites, or the Mytsry, the people of Egypt, they expressed gratitude to yourself for saving them, even though their new status as tenant farmers effectively makes them servants to the system. But in their minds, this was some sort of saving or salvation of the sorts. What are the consequences of this? When people become accustomed to dependence on an external authority for their survival, they may be less likely to challenge or resist. As I would have pointed out a short while now, even when faced with unfair or exploitative conditions, they remain passive. This acceptance can erode the desire for self-sufficiency and freedom, leading to a cycle where reliance on authority feels like the norm. In our and this is happening even in our societies now. This is evident in persons depending on welfare. There's a heavy dependency on welfare. When survival is at stake, individuals may prioritize immediate needs over long-term rights or freedoms.
Ecclesiastes 4 verses 9 to 12. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one lifts his companion up. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Also, if two lie down together, they keep warm, but how does one keep warm by himself? Although one might be overpowered, two withstand him. And a threefold cord is not readily broken. This passage emphasizes the strength and support found in community. Working together leads to better outcomes, and mutual support provides help in times of need, protection, and resilience.
Proverbs 27 verses 23 to 24. Know well the state of your flocks, pay careful attention to your herds, for riches are not forever, nor a diadem to all generations. This passage teaches us to monitor and manage our resources carefully to ensure long-term sustainability.
Devarim 15 verses 7 to 8. When there is a poor man with you, one of your brothers, within any of the gates in your land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, Do not harden your heart nor shut your hand from your poor brother. For you shall certainly open your hand to him and certainly lend him enough for his need, whatever he needs. Cultivating a heart of generosity and community support can help prevent poverty, without solely relying on government aid.
Proverbs 28 verse 19. He who tills his land is satisfied with bread, but he who pursues vanities is filled with poverty. This verse teaches us to focus on productive work rather than pursuing unrealistic dreams or schemes.
Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6. Trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Know him in all your ways, and he makes all your paths straight. This scripture teaches us to trust in Yahweh's wisdom rather than our own understanding, especially in financial matters. By submitting our ways to the Most High, we gain his guidance in making wise financial decisions, avoiding debt, and managing resources effectively. This trust and reliance on Yahweh provide a path to financial independence and resilience, helping us avoid poverty and dependence on unpredictable external systems like government aid. The verse encourages personal responsibility, diligent work, and seeking the Most High's direction to ensure stability and prosperity.
Yahushua 1 verse 8. Do not let this book of the Torah depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it yom or day and leela or night, so that you guard to do according to all that is written in it.
For then you shall make your way prosperous and act wisely. This scripture teaches that consistent meditation on and obedience to Yahuwah's word leads to wisdom, prosperity, and success. Individuals can avoid poor choices that lead to financial ruin or dependency on external systems. Prosperity comes from living according to Yahuwah's instructions, which includes principles like wise financial stewardship, hard work, integrity, and the power of giving.
Above all, remember Devarim 8 verse 18. It says that you shall remember Yahweh your Elohim, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, in order to establish his covenant which he swore to your fathers, as it is even now.
We are the Mytsrym of Yahuwah.
And of course, we say Akkad
Ahava,
which means
one love.
And we thank all our viewers and subscribers, all the family of the Most High, for viewing today's presentation.